All right, everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and it is with the most heavy heart that I make this video today. Darth Traya has officially been nerfed. I want to talk about it. Let's go down to Darth Traya and just hold a moment of silence for the time that she was the queen of our Grand Arena tables, defeating Lord Vader and just being, really stealing that crown as the queen. Obviously, Wampa being our king, but Traya as our queen of the Grand Arena. So a moment of silence, if you will, please join me in that. Thank you. I'm getting a little emotional here. I'm sorry. So let's talk about this, fix. So they added this sentence that, and if there are no enemy dark side galactic legends. I'm going right now. This is embarrassing. Like, guys, I normally try to defend, CG. This is embarrassing. This is 100% embarrassing. To me, this screams that even with all the changes that they did, where they said that, oh, she was gaining 500% offense instead of, 100. I guarantee you, even with 100, she was still beating GLs, right? I guarantee you she was still beating Lord Vader. There were ways around it. This is embarrassing. They just should have said Galactic Legends because they said Dark Side. It screams, one, there's no way she beats Kenobi, right? There's no way she beats Jedi Master Kenobi. I cannot see this team beating Rey. I don't see how they're going to be able to beat Rey. Jedi Master Luke is the only team maybe potentially they could, but even then, I'm still struggling to see how they're going to be able to beat that team. Who knows? Maybe we'll try it out. I don't see how they can do it. And I just think it's embarrassing. Right? I think this is pie in the face to Capital Games yet again, where they designed an Omicron that we all loved and they stripped it away from us. So I want to show you guys some of the past nerfs that have happened and why. And each time I will explain why I think this Darth Traya one is embarrassing. Like the rest of these, you can understand it. I'm going to explain why I think this one was embarrassing. So let's get into it, guys. Before we do that, let's get a little bit happier. Let's look at our King Wampa. If you guys want to see him relegate live on stream, all you need to do get this channel to 5,000 subscribers. Capital Games has never had to nerf Wampa because if they did, they know that I would come down there and make him even better. He'd be a galactic legend. He would be amazing. He'd be good in every single game mode because he is king. Guys, make sure that you get your Wampas up and running. He just revolutionizes your GAC experience. Okay, so let's go to this tab I made. And I want to say that I made this before this video came out. So like the, Lord balance to the Force failure. Right? I still think Lord Vader, even with this, right, was still very good. He's a great offensive galactic legend. But these were the real Sith Lords, right? And I will say this. The nerf makes sense from the standpoint that like a Relic 3 Nihilus, a Relic 3 Traya, and Relic 7 Sidious got me wins against Lord Vader every single time I faced him in GAC. And that's embarrassing, right? I mean, Relic 3, Relic 7 with one Omicron, a couple of Zetas, and you're, ruining Lord Vader's life. I get it. The reason I say that this is embarrassing is that her kit, when you read that, the first thing I thought of when I read that was, this is beating Lord Vader. So that means they didn't test it properly, right? That means that they did not test this properly at all, because you read that kit, like me reading that kit, I'm just like, oh, this probably beats Lord Vader. I mean, how do you not think that, right? So they put it into the game and then they take it away from us, right? And because they specifically call out Dark Side Galactic Legends, to me means that they recognize that she's not beating Rey, Kenobi. I don't know about Luke. I don't know yet. I don't think you'd really need a debuff heavy Luke team to be able to beat them with this team, and I just don't see that happening. I actually wasn't sure, and I'll say this, with the Omicron, the other thing they fixed is they said that this offense, is now properly going to 100 instead of 500. I don't know that I buy that as much, but here's what I'll say. That might change the Darth Malgus scenario. That, it might change a little bit of how we have to play against Darth Malgus because a lot of the ways you were able to beat him was you would just start dealing so much damage to him that he couldn't recover. And I just don't know if that will continue to be the case or not. Starkiller, it'll get harder for sure. I don't think it'll be impossible, right? But it's definitely going to get harder. You're going to have to play these differently. So these guys kind of got a little bit better with this kit change to Darth Traya. Not that you would run these guys with Galactic Legends, right? But, with Darth Traya now, it does seem like these guys got a little bit of a bump up and that Omicron's going to be better for, that this change was better for these guys. I want to get into some of the other nerfs that have happened and show you, I said I would do this, right? Where I'm going to explain why this one is different, right? So let's get into the first one that I really remember in GAC specifically, and that is the 4.5 Masters, right? This is a fantastic Omicron for Qui-Gon Jinn, where what would happen is you'd go up against a Kylo, and Kylo would poke your Qui-Gon Jinn to death, and then Anakin would come in and just delete the team. I mean, immediate deletion of everybody, one-shotting Kylo everywhere. So they updated Qui-Gon Jinn's Omicron to just say if there are no Galactic Legends, right? They just took away all GLs. And that was very fair to me, right? I understand that this was it was broken, right? They said that he was gaining too much offense. Again, I don't buy that. I think that they design it and then they're like, oh, we don't like that, So they just said no GLs, and that's that, right? Now that Omicron doesn't work at all against Galactic Legends, but still a very good team. It didn't lose value against anything else in the game, just against Galactic Legends. And that's why I think this is perfectly balanced, is that this Omicron is 100%, this nerf is 100% like it's changing her offense, right? Which they said they did with Qui-Gon Jinn. But was it really, was it really calculating improperly? I don't know. But again, similar, but we need to see how it performs now that, with Qui-Gon Jinn, he didn't really lose anything against all the rest of these teams. Traya could lose stuff against Darth Malgus and Starkiller potentially, so we'll just have to wait and see how that pans out. But this was a one that was a little bit better because they're just like, no GLs, right? That's all we're doing, no GLs. I'm okay with that. Then there was a buff to Kenobi, right? And this was after release, and I wanted to put this before what I would call the great nerfs of 2021, because this one reminds me very much of this Lord Vader Supreme Leader Kylo Ren counter, where they were stopping specific things from happening, and they basically, with the Traya and Qui-Gon Jinn, they went and nerfed the character. With Kenobi, he actually got buffed against other things. So there was some extreme cheese teams that were beating Jedi Master Kenobi when he came out, right? So the first one was this Sith Eternal, Sith Assassin, Zombie, and Acolyte. Let me show you guys how this works. And with these gear levels, I might add, I was beating Kenobi. So Acolyte gains stealth, has a 90% chance to gain stealth for 2 turns on her basic, right? So she can be perpetually in stealth. You guys know with Night Sister Zombie, as long as there's another Night Sister ally active, she will revive whenever she dies, right? So Zombie just perpetually coming back because Acolyte's under stealth. Sith Assassin can gain stealth for 2 turns on the special ability, and then whenever she attacks an enemy that's debuffed, she will gain stealth, right? So keep that in mind. She can stay under stealth because Deceived is a debuff, and Deceived says that if you're Deceived, you cannot target Sith Eternal if another Sith enemy is active. Well, as long as there's Deceived on the field, Sith Assassin's staying under stealth, Acolyte's under stealth, which means Zombie and Sith Eternal are out in the open. But Sith Eternal has that Sith ally that's active, so you just have to sit there and target Zombie. This, to me, reminds me very much of, this. In a way, it's very different from this, right? Because they just said to Kenobi, okay, when you get into the high ground, right? While he has the high ground, he dispels stealth from all enemies at the start of his turn. Fine, right? This was the way they wanted to fix it, is that you cannot use this team. This one I understood from the pure aspect that, Gear 12, like Gear 10 Zombie, and I was beating these teams, right? And I understand this one a lot more than I understand the Darth Traya situation, because with Darth Traya, it was like her kit design was said, screamed, I beat Lord Vader, right? This is like, they're like, I don't like the way this interaction is happening. We want Kenobi to be better than this. Fine. The one that I didn't appreciate was that you could use armor, Wat Tambor with a bunch of tanks, right? And this is still a strategy today. But back in the day, it was a lot easier. You would just get Sith Eternal with crazy amounts of protection and health. And then Kenobi, with his healing immunity, right, just wouldn't be able to get through Sith Eternal. Like, it wouldn't matter. He would never get through to his health because he had so much protection. So then they said at the start of battle, if there's a light side unaligned Force user, that's also Galactic Republic. I wonder who that would be. It couldn't be Commander Tano, could it? Has to be Commander Tano. All Jedi allies ignore protection when targeting a Sith enemy, and Sith enemies can't counterattack for the rest of battle. That counterattack part is also directly at the armor, because if you give Kenobi 3 stacks of Beskar, he gets 100% counter chance. So you're taking away another way that Sith Eternal would deal damage to this team, right? Because he'd be counterattacking constantly. You wouldn't get through his protection, so now it's just you're going straight through his health, and this was a really this team right here. I understand stopping, right? This was a little bit too cheesy, even for me as someone who used it. I didn't have Kenobi when this happened. I only had Sith Eternal and like Jedi Master Luke when this happened. This was, I understood. The armor to me was a step too far. I feel that was 100% a slap in the face to the player base. It's still a counter that works now. It's just a lot harder, right? It's much harder to pull off. I want to take a minute and say that, the differences between this one, the armor one to me reminds me a little bit more of the Lord Vader fix here, that like they were just like, no, we don't want Sith Eternal beating Jedi Master Kenobi, right? Like that's it. We don't want that happening. Like specifically just calling out Sith Eternal without saying it, right? And that's what this Traya one is doing. This one reminds me 100%. This one is, a little bit more understandable, right? So now let's get to the great nerfs of 2021, right? So you had Rey, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, and Sith Eternal, I would say, were the GLs that were impacted by this, right? So let's start with Sith Eternal. He actually got a buff for once, which was surprising. So before this, Imperial troopers were destroying Sith Eternal. I mean, destroying him. And that was because you would just ramp your offense so much through the Emperor's Trap, right, which is that locked buff that they would get. So you'd ramp your offense and you would just run a train around Sith Eternal. And it didn't even matter if they linked Dark Trooper, right? Because Dark Trooper doesn't critically hit anyway. So you almost wanted your Dark Trooper to get linked so that way, like, that was the rest of your characters could critically hit. If you didn't get linked, didn't matter. You would just destroy anyway. So what they did with Sith Eternal's kit was that I believe it's in his leadership down here. They added a sentence that whenever an enemy gains a buff that can't be dispelled, Sith allies gain 5% turn meter. So there's still some ways to get through this, right? You could try to use days, right, ability blocks, but it really made it a lot more difficult for troopers to solo Sith Eternal or to beat Sith Eternal, right? It really did. I've done it maybe a couple of times on territory wars, but I don't really try it in GAC because it is very risky. So that was the Sith Eternal one, right? That was a buff for him. That was one that I was okay with, right? They're just like, we're stopping this. It was an easy counter to do. So, that's that. Supreme Leader Kylo Ren has gone through a lot of stuff. I mean, at first, he couldn't beat the 501st. Then the team that they really ended up buffing him against, right? What ended up happening was he would hard target 5s. He was hard coded to target 5s because they didn't want him to get the sacrifice, right? Like if you got the sacrifice, it was a lot easier for that team to beat Kylo. So he would target 5s. Well, in 3v3, right? And this was only a 3v3 counter. You would use General Skywalker, 5s, and Chewie, and you would give 5s guard. 5s on guard was very important because Kylo would just constantly go after 5s, and he wouldn't be critically hitting, so he wouldn't be gaining that ultimate charge, right? And then your General Skywalker and Chewie would just go all in on Kylo. And back in the day, General Skywalker, that's the chosen one. Back in the day, he could increase cooldowns on Galactic Legends. They changed that, right? They very much changed that. They did not like that happening. The other thing they changed with General Skywalker's kit was if the enemy had no protection whenever he uses an ability, you could reduce their max health by 20% for the rest of battle. This was directly in response to Rey. This was more so the Rey counter than Kylo. Against Rey, even with 501st and then obviously with like Jedi Knight Revan teams as well, you could reduce Rey's health to like nothing because bonus protection doesn't count as regular protection, right? So with Rey, what you would do is just constantly attack her with General Skywalker, right? And she, when she wouldn't have protection and her health would just get smaller and smaller. Keeping in mind, guys, that under Revan's lead, if you're attacking an enemy with bonus protection, you also reduce their health by 10% stacking. And that still works against Galactic Legends. The issue was that General Skywalker was using 2 abilities per turn, right? So imagine Rey has no protection. I just reduced her health by 20%. I then could reduce it by a further 20%, right? Because I'm going to attack twice. And if she had bonus protection, I'm reducing it by 10% each that time. That's 60%. Now, obviously, it's not like 60 total, right? It's 20% of, call it 100,000, right? So it goes down to 80. then it's going to go get reduced by 16,000, right? Which brings it down to what? 64,000, right? And then it's going to reduce that by another 20, which is like what? 12,800, right? So now she's down like 51,000 range. So, she's getting reduced, but it's not as, obviously that 20% starts becoming less and less as you get lower and lower. So they had to, really change General Skywalker. They reduced his damage too, that's why Jedi Knight Luke is on this list, is that they nerfed his damage. Jedi Knight Luke was deleting Kylo. That with the Jedi's Will here, this 100% counter chance, the offense, I watched my Luke get poked by a Kylo, and the counter attack that Luke did hit Kylo for more than Kylo was hitting me. I mean, it was incredible. It was one of the craziest things that would happen. So they nerfed Jedi Knight Luke to ensure that he wasn't dealing as much damage to Galactic Legends. So yeah, guys, with these ones down here, the difference to me between the Kylo buffs needed to happen because 501st was beating him. The Rey Jedi one, I think, hurt me a lot because, I don't know, in my personal opinion, that was still a very risky counter. And it was something that you were just exploiting her. The Rey version actually reminds me a lot of Lord Vader's, where you're just exploiting the character's kit, right? That we were able to find that Lord Vader's debuff heavy. Traya wants that, right? She's going to take those debuffs and they're going to gain offense, right? It's the same thing with Rey, where Rey's whole kit is about that bonus protection. Well, now you don't have any health, so once I get through that, you're instantly dead, right? And then Sith Eternal getting those buffs, I think, was important, right? I think that one was a good change. Kind of reminded me of the Sith Eternal with the Assassin Zombie, where Capital Games went and said, you know what, we don't like the way this is interacting because we want Galactic Legends to be the pinnacle. So if we go back to the top here, right, we get back on track, kind of conclude this video for you guys. I think this is an embarrassing decision to just say the dark side GLs. They basically said we can't fix this against Lord Vader. We don't know how. I don't know how this will perform. They are going to refund us these mats. I don't know if I'll equip this or not. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know if I'll equip this or not. It'll kind of be a game time decision to see, how that happens and, what I think this team can do. But honestly, guys, this is a pretty bumming one. Even with Lord Vader where I'm helping, I still think it's, going to get worse against these characters as well. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I thought it'd be important to show the history of these nerfs, right? And I just want to call out a couple of them that I felt were similar and other ones that I think were good, right? Because these are things that, I'm okay with a nerf when with this one down here, right? With this Kylo and the 4.5 Masters, right? I was okay with this because I understand that this is not their intention, right? That they don't want this to beat a Galactic Legend like Kylo. With this one, the reason I had a problem is that this was in the kit design, right? That this was you clearly didn't test this enough to understand that this was happening. With this kit, right? If you just attacked Anakin first and got him under stealth and then you went for Qui-Gon Jinn, it didn't matter, right? You would have destroyed the team. So I get that, but this one here, guys, it really hurts. Again, leave likes, leave comments, let me know what your thoughts are, and make sure you smash that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.